Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
Who's trying to quietly, without too much noise, open up a can of fizzy water. Well, it wasn't that loud.
All right, that's good.
We could hear it. Hey, if you haven't done so already, take a minute and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this. And if you're watching this, we have this on YouTube now as a video podcast. So if you are watching it on YouTube right now, leave us a comment below. Let us know that you're here watching it there. And if you want to be a part of the show, email podcast@dfchurch.com. We do have some letters written in this week, so I'm excited to get to that. But first, we're going to go to the news. Now, the biggest thing that I see, well, there's a lot going on in the news right now. One of the things that's kind of an interesting story that I see popping up right now, it sounds like Title 42 is ending. Now, I had to look up what Title 42 was. Okay. Title 42 was something that was passed by Trump during the COVID pandemic, and it has to do with border security and turning people, like even asylum seekers, having to be like stopped and like putting an end to that. And so with it expiring, especially now that they've finally declared that the COVID pandemic is over, right? That's expiring. And so what people are doing, there's just like massive amounts of people are lining up at the border because as soon as that expires, it changes the way the policy handles. But now it's creating a whole new kind of a crisis because all of a sudden you've just got tons more people at the border. And it's not, so what seems like the biggest frustration on a lot of people is that we all knew this was ending, and the government, like Congress, could have passed something in place and been ready and had like, additional processing centers, or it sounds like Biden is talking about trying to get additional spots in like Colombia and stuff open so people can apply for asylum as they're leaving South America and not have to wait till they get here. So interesting. And so that there's already something in place. And then, but it sounds like what they're doing now today is just letting people come in and say, come back in 60 days for your hearing. Which seems like that might come back to bite them in the butt. Well, because hopefully, obviously, we would hope that we could trust people to say, come back when they're supposed to come back. But interesting. Does that? I don't know. Right.
So this is why they sent like a whole bunch of troops down to the border over the last few days, right?
Yes.
Because I heard about that, but I didn't look into why it was happening. But this is why.
Right. Okay. Because it's going to be a huge
that's crazy
influx. Yeah. And so we don't know what's going to happen. But it kind of goes back to this thing of like, how do you handle immigration? And I know like on the conservative side, there's often a label of being anti-immigration. I would say at least, personally, and I think you're probably this, is that we generally tend to be against like illegally coming in, but we love people to come in all you want. And so maybe there's a conversation to be had about is the actual immigration process too like restrictive? Right. Is the problem that it's too like there it's unnecessarily difficult for people to legally do it? And so it's kind of like I think about like downloading like movies and CDs illegally. Like that happens a lot, but I think it happens more when finding Sorry, I just hit my computer. Wow. That was exciting, guys. I think that happens more when digital, like as soon as Spotify and Apple Music and stuff started doing digital music, I feel like music piracy dropped significantly. Like people were willing to even pay monthly and have music. The problem is if there's no way to do that and there's a really easy way to pirate it, or it's really like it costs way too much, or it's too difficult to do.
I paid $20 for one CD with 12 songs on it.
Right. Then people are going to go the illegal route. But when you find a reasonable way to make it work, then people are willing to do that. So I don't know if, not to get into a whole debate on immigration policy here, because I'm not an expert on that. I don't think you're an expert on that. But it's definitely an interesting thing. So that's kind of what's going on right now. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but maybe we'll check in the next couple of weeks and see if anything has come from that.
Yeah.
But But that's the big thing I saw going on in the world right now. Matt, did you notice anything interesting going on in the news lately?
It's mostly just a lot of politics.
Yeah, they had a big like town hall thing on CNN with Trump last night, and it's causing a lot. And Trump just got found civilly liable in a case.
Right. Yep.
But I guess the bar on a civil case is a lot lower than the bar on a criminal case.
Right. Yep. Yeah. There's just a lot of stuff like that happening.
A lot of stuff going on with politics. Well, let's jump then into our main topic. So I know last week we talked about 5 things that people think are in the Bible, but aren't at all.
Yep.
And I gave you guys, if you missed that one, we talked about this week. We're going to have kind of the opposite. We're going to be talking about, is it 5?
It's a handful.
I think there's
5,
a handful
6,
of things
47. I don't know.
that Matt had found that you might be surprised are in the Bible. So stuff you might not know is in the Bible. Like these aren't the normal stories you hear in Sunday school.
They're not your Sunday school. Yeah.
But maybe they should be because.
Right.
So, I mean, all of these I knew they were in the Bible.
So we did,
but
was it last summer? 2 summers ago? We did like the strange or weird stories
strange
in the Bible.
And weird stories in the Bible.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these are some of them. And I remember a lot of our students were like, wait, seriously?
Yeah. This is not something you often hear about.
Yep.
All right. So let's start off with the first one.
Okay.
This is pretty fun. Ezekiel 1 through 16.
Yeah. The little summary is lie down on your side for 1 year and eat bread baked with human poo.
So you might not know this, that in the Bible that there was a prophet who was commanded to lie on his side for a year.
Yep.
Like God, the prophets, everybody thinks that like it'd be so cool to be a prophet of God, but they had to like live out some object lessons in some crazy ways that would not have been pleasant.
It's so weird. And like, why?
So why? Yeah. So this is the question. Why did he have to lay on his side? So the first thing that happens, this is even cool. Like he sees this being appear, the center of this cloud of fire, looking like glowing metal, and inside the fire was 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. They all had faces and wings. And each face had each of the 4 had the face of a human being. On the right side, each had the face of a lion. On the left, the face of an ox, and then the face of an eagle. So even before we get to the living on your side for a month and cooking over human poo, you've got these. This would be like, are aliens in the Bible?
Right. This is where you might find them.
This is where you would find it. Because these are like these crazy looking creatures.
Then you go a couple chapters later. It's actually in chapter 4 where we get like the real description of this happening. So, and you, son of man, take a brick and lay it before you and engrave on it a city, even Jerusalem, and put siege works against it and build a siege wall against it and cast up a mound against it, set camps against it, plant battering rams against it all around. And
build like a little model city?
Little model city.
So fun.
And you take an iron griddle and place it as an iron wall between you and the city and then set your face. So he built this little mini city.
Yep.
Not on rock and roll. He didn't build the city on rock and roll.
Where's he doing this? Like in his house?
Outside the city gates. I don't know. Okay, so he's laying down. Set your face towards it. Let it be a state of siege and press the siege against it. This is a sign for the house of Israel. Then verse 4 of chapter 4. Then lie on your left side and place the punishment of the house of Israel upon it. For the number of days that you lie on it, you shall bear their punishment. For I assign to you a number of days, 390 days, equal to the number of years of their punishment. Yep. So long shall you bear your punishment of the house of Israel. When you have completed these, you shall lie down a second time, but on your right side, and bear the punishment of Judah. 40 days I assign to you, each day for a year. Set your face towards siege. Behold, I'll place cords upon you, so you can't turn from one side to another. So like he's stuck there.
Right.
God made it so he couldn't move.
So I think that it's, this is an object lesson to demonstrate the punishment that's coming to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would imagine he's doing this maybe in a visible place. It's almost like you see like a performance artist, or like there was this one guy who was a monk in India, I want to say, who as a form of protest put his hand up for like 40 years. Like it locked into place that way. So this type of thing can happen. It's definitely a strange thing. But again, this is where we've talked about when we talked about like the alleged contradictions of the Bible.
Yeah.
When you talk about prescriptive versus descriptive, like this is not something that we are all to go do.
Correct.
But
this is a descriptive moment. And then if you keep going in chapter 4, you see baking the bread on human dung. So delicious.
Now, why do you think? I mean, so he's using that as a fuel source as opposed to something else. Is it just because it's going to smell bad?
Right.
And it's going to
so it like makes you
it?
suffer a little bit. Well, yeah, because like aromas, when I like
if
smoke
I
something.
smoke some meat.
Yeah.
So if I have.
Thank you for clarifying. When I smoke some meat, that's the important part there. When I put meat in the smoker, those aromas from that smoke that goes up and around the food get absorbed by the food. So if I'm baking this bread on human dung, bread is a very like absorbent food. And so it's ugh.
It sounds like it would have been otherwise a pretty interesting bread. Wheat, barley, beans, and lentil, millet, and emmer. I don't know what that is. What's emmer? Do you know?
No.
So he's making this kind of a nutrition.
Oh, it's a type of wheat.
Okay, so it's a cake.
Yeah.
Unleavened, it looks like. I don't see yeast in there anywhere. Beans and lentils. So it's
hearty.
Yeah, that would keep you going.
Yep. But then dung.
But then you're cooking it over that. Yeah. But he's doing this while he's on his side.
Right. Unable to move.
So he's got to have people helping him.
Yeah. Feeding him.
Well, he could. I think he could.
Okay. Because it says, what was it in verse 8 of chapter 4? Behold, I'll place cords upon you so that you cannot turn from one side to another.
Right. So he can't turn over.
So he can still reach maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I got it.
He can reach and like he has to go to the bathroom, right? I mean, that's where he gets the fuel source.
Yeah, it's just cooking right behind him.
This is a really sad
Yeah.
story, and I feel bad for poor Ezekiel.
Yeah.
But this happened.
Right.
And this was an object lesson.
Yeah.
To make you realize, like, I guess how terrible this punishment was going to be for Israel.
Yep.
Weird.
It's crazy. All right, let's go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one. I love this story. Sword lost in the king's fat belly while bowels get discharged.
Yep. So
another one about poop.
Another one with poo. We had to put these back to back. So Eglon is the king, and Ehud is
the assassin.
The assassin.
So
he made a sword.
Yes.
Okay, and this is in Judges chapter 3, by the way. Verses 12 to 23 is where you kind of get this story.
Yeah.
Good.
You know what's awesome about Ehud?
What?
One of my favorite parts about him. And you're going to, at first, it's like, wait, why do they even have to mention this? But there's a reason. He was a lefty like me.
Yes.
He's a left-handed guy.
That's actually called out in Scripture. It points out he's a left-handed person.
Now, Matt, what percentage of people are left-handed? Do you know?
3.
No, you went lower.
Oh.
It's about 10 to 11.
Oh, that's
10 to 11% of people are left-handed. So that's a pretty good. We are still a minority by a lot.
Yeah.
But we're not.
Good for you.
You know.
Love it.
It's a hard life. You know, our language is biased against left-handed people. So, for instance,
I feel like we've had this discussion before.
Probably, but maybe not on the podcast. The word sinister, the root of that word means left-handed.
Right. Well, it makes sense because left-handed people are
sinister.
What? You said it.
It's true. As well as the word right means correct.
Right.
And even the word ambidextrous means right-handed in both hands. Like dexterity means right.
That's so funny.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
And our language, like if we're trying to write, we're going to lefties always smear.
You're smearing it. Yep.
But Hebrew goes the other way. God was looking out for us lefties.
The chosen people.
Was Jesus left-handed?
Wow.
Probably.
Well, we know Ehud was.
So, and we'll talk about why this was, but
yeah, so he makes a double-edged sword about a cubit long.
Right.
He straps it to his right thigh under his clothing.
And this is where being a lefty matters. If you put it on your right-hand side, so as a lefty, you can grab it and pull it out. Right. Now, most people, they're expecting a righty. They're checking for weapons on your left leg. They don't even think to check. See, this is why you pat down the whole body, but they didn't. They
didn't do it then.
They were assuming righty, and it got them in trouble.
So he presents, and it says in verse 17 of Judges 3, Ehud, presented a tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. So called out right away that he's a very large dude. And then he presents this tribute, and then he tells the king, Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you. And I love that because
awesome.
he had a plan of what's going to happen here, right?
And it gets even cooler.
So the king tells everybody, get out of here.
Yeah.
Leave us. He's got this secret message. I'm excited to hear it because I'm the king and he's probably going to bless me with something else, right? I'm getting something
He
good.
just brought me all this stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so the king is being set up here. Ehud then approached him. This is verse 20.
So now everybody else is gone.
They're gone. It's just
the two of them in this room. Just
the two of us. All right. Sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, I have a message from God for you.
This is so
And as
awesome.
the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, plunged it into the king's belly, and even the handle sank in after the blade, and his bowels discharged. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed over it.
Holy cow. That's like a killer thing to be like, I've got a message from God for you. Ka-ka! And you stab him.
And then he went out to the porch, shut the doors of the upper room behind him, and locked him. He just walked away.
Now you know what happens next. You don't have it copied here, but then after a while, they're like,
what's going on?
What's going on with the king? Is something going on? And then they leave him alone for a while because they think he's going to the bathroom.
Right.
Probably because of the stink of his bowels.
His bowels discharging.
They must be like, wow, he's having one of his, daily poops. We don't want to bug him during that. You know how mad he gets.
Yep.
And that is what allows Ehud to get
away
because they assume after the secret message, the king just went to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
That's like why we need a movie of that. That sounds like a cool movie.
Oh man. That's crazy.
It would be R-rated though for sure when you saw the guts flopping out and stuff. Yeah, this would be violent.
Yeah.
But we talked about why don't Christians make good movies? Make that one.
Make that one. All right, there you go, filmmakers out there. You have some content here for you.
Yes. All right, let's go on to the next
right,
one. These are fun. I like this.
So God was about to kill Moses.
Yep.
But he decides against it after he sees some foreskin blood on his feet.
Yeah. This one is such a strange story because Moses is getting sent out to talk to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And God's like, let's go do it. And then the way it's written, it's almost like God is like, oh, wait a minute. You're not circumcised yet? Oh, well, then I'm going to kill you. And it's like, didn't you know that already, God?
Right.
Like it was just strange. But then his wife saves him and says, she then circumcises her son, touches Moses' feet with it and says, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So the Lord let him alone.
Yeah.
That's just a strange story. It's like, why? Well, all right. So there's
so much weird with it.
We get that circumcision is important in the Old Testament. We get that this is something of the law that Moses was not yet. And so it's almost like we're missing a part of this story. Like, I feel like there should have been a part where God was like, and before you go, make sure you're ceremonially ready. And Moses was like, nope, I'm out. And so then God says, well, then here's what's going to happen. And then Zipporah's like, no, I'll save you. Like, I feel like there's a story missing in the middle of this one.
It's interesting. It's a weird one.
It's strange. If you've read this story, if you have any thoughts on this one has always been one of the stranger Bible stories, I think, to me.
Because it feels like we're missing
other details. So if you've done any research or read on any of this and you've got something to add, please email podcast@dfchurch.com because I'd love to hear, and I can look it up too, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story as well.
Sweet. So this other one is not nearly as
bizarro,
just kind of fun to think about.
Okay.
So Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 11. And this is a parenthetical verse. So like
the author put it in later type thing.
As if just so you know, let me give you a little bit of random information here.
Okay.
And so this verse says, Og, king of Bashan, was the last of the words are hard right now.
They are.
Rephites.
Okay. Who are the Rephites?
They are the people of Repha.
Oh, well, thanks. That's helpful.
Why not?
Where's Repha? Or Refa?
Yeah, it's in
Refa. Rephites.
No, they're not the people of Repha. Hold up.
Okay, we're gonna look. So he's looking at this up.
Okay.
Is there something that we know about them specifically?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a Semitic term, which refers to people of greater than average height and stature.
Oh, so it's almost like the Last of the Giants.
The last of the giants. Yes.
Jedi. Mohicans.
So the last of the Mohicans. So, okay. So here, Og King of Bashan. His bed was decorated with iron.
Okay. That's cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Iron frame bed.
Yep. And was more than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide.
Okay.
So that's about 14 feet long
Whoa.
and 6 feet wide. His bed was
So he was really
14 by
tall.
6. Yeah, 14 feet long.
And 6
So
feet
6
wide.
feet wide is not
like
enough
6
for like
feet wide.
a lot of people. That's just like a standard
Is that
like
a king
size bed.
Is king 6 feet?
Yeah, I think it's about, so it's a little bigger than 6 by 6. It's like 75 inches each way.
So it's as wide as a king bed, but tall.
Double length.
He was a tall guy.
He was a big dude.
Yeah, this is an interesting question.
Or was he not really the Rephite? Was he not really a giant dude? And he just
had a big
wanted
bed.
a really big bed, and so he looked like a midget on it.
What were beds like in did they have mattresses? Did they just like put in like
Was it just stone with like feathers?
Yeah.
Dirt leaves? Those would crumble.
I don't know what they slept on back then.
Well then, if you guys know and have done some research, let us know.
If you've ever slept on a bed,
that,
like that's it. That's cool. I like that.
That is huge.
That is really big.
Man, that's the only reason that's in there is because, man, that's a big bed.
I know. I really like that.
Another
this is funny.
random one about a big dude.
From descendant from Rapha.
Mm-hmm. So, 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 20. In still another battle which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He was also a descendant of Rapha.
So the super tall guy with crazy, like that's a genetic mutation that is.
But on both hands and both feet had the bonus digit.
Now I wonder, with those extra fingers, could he use it just as easily as his other ones? Because he should have been like a piano player then. You could have done some sweet stuff. I know they didn't have pianos back then, but like
he could have
did
invented
any of the? How often did these Rephites have extra digits?
Right.
And did any of them become musicians because of it? Because that would have been cool.
So, well, I wonder if because this one specifically like called out with the extra digit,
It wasn't normal. Still.
it maybe wasn't a normal thing.
But
Yeah.
whatever genetic anomaly was making them giants, I wonder if there's any correlation now between like a giantism and extra digits.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting thing too.
I love it. We have just a couple more here. So this is a fairly quick one. Exodus chapter 22. It tells you that if someone is intruding, breaking into your place,
Okay.
and you kill them,
Whoa.
you're only guilty if it happens during the day. If it happens at night, you're off the hook. So Exodus 22 verses 2 through 3. If a
like
thief
that.
is caught breaking in at night and is struck a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, the defender is guilty of bloodshed.
All right. So this is in Exodus. This is law. So
is
we're
law.
talking about
Yep.
like how do you function in society? Kind of what we've talked about this in the past. I think that it seems like it makes sense because if you're sleeping, it's night, you get woken up, you don't know what's going on, and they're like somebody's in here.
Yeah.
You kill them. That seems more accidental,
Okay.
right? So it's okay. But if it's during the day, you're wide awake. They come in and you're like, leave. And they're like, okay, sorry. And then you're like, cha-cha, and you kill them. You're more guilty because you're more awake and aware of your senses than getting woken up.
Would a thief really be like, oh, you want me to not steal from you? Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Right.
I'm on my way
The
out.
bigger question is, why is somebody trying to break in and steal during the day while you're home, knowing it? Like, I get if you're asleep and they're going to try to cat burgle you and like sneak around your house and get something.
Yep.
And then you wake up and in a tizzy or panic because you don't know what's going on, you kill them.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
So what's funny is if I'm a thief
Yeah.
and I heard about this law, I'm now only breaking in during the daytime because chances are you don't want to be guilty of bloodshed.
Right.
And so I'm going to steal from you because I have a higher chance of survival in that moment than if I do it at night.
Now, I wonder, though, if you're more awake, you're more aware, and it's harder to steal from somebody. And so maybe that's the case, but this then lowers the theft rate all around.
It's weird
because now people are like, well, I'm going to steal during the day. Well, then there's
a lot of really weird and oddly specific laws. And part of me wants to know, like, what was the circumstance? What was going on that led to this needing to be a law?
It's like when you see like a label on like a food product, and you're like, what was the thing that prompted them to need to put this on?
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't quite the same, but it makes me think like Pop-Tarts have very detailed instructions on how to prepare them. And it's like, really?
Who needed that?
Who needed those instructions?
That's funny. So there's a bonus one. This one, I mean, most of these have been about PG-13.
Yeah.
So
this is maybe not.
this might go just a step further. So just be careful. Okay. It's in the Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 11 through 12. I'm just going to read the text.
Okay.
This is the Bible talking.
Okay.
Not Matt. I am quoting, thus quoteth
the Lord.
The Lord. Deuteronomy 25. If two men are fighting, and the wife of one of them comes to rescue her husband from his assailant. First of all, thank you, wife.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to my defense. I like that. To rescue her husband from his assailant, and she reaches out and seizes him by his private parts, you shall cut off her hand, show her no pity. So as men, we know, like, if we're fighting or we're wrestling, like, that's an off limits. That's a low blow. You don't do it. That is like
you don't go below the belt.
The art of war. You don't go below the belt. So if the wife comes and she breaks that rule, show no pity on her.
Now,
cut off the hand.
That's so strange because it's like, what? Do we get any type of deliberation? Like, what? It's a scuffle. You're fighting around. She didn't mean to. She's just trying to.
Well, so it says seizes.
All right,
that
so
tells me
like
it's more than like an accidental hit. It's a I know where I can hurt you the most.
Right, but again, it's to protect your husband.
No pity. Show her no pity.
That's harsh.
I know.
I mean, I get it as a man, but
man.
Wow.
So these are just a handful of some of the stranger things that, like, we often maybe skip over as we're reading through, or like go by quick, or we forget because that's just too weird. I don't want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, that it just doesn't. It doesn't sound good.
Good time. So, Nathan, you had mentioned that maybe you had just a couple of funny, quick ones. Yeah,
there's a couple funny ones. I was talking with somebody else at church this week about this topic, and he had asked, like, well, are you going to talk about when, like, Shrek is mentioned in the Bible? And I said, when Shrek, like, the character, or he's at the movie.
The movie Shrek
is in the Bible. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, Balaam's donkey is a talking donkey. That's like Shrek. I thought, okay, so we can talk about ways that you can frame things that are in the Bible that just sound ridiculous. Okay. Kind of like what we talked about in Ezekiel.
With aliens.
You have aliens and UFOs because there's a big spinning wheel. And actually, I did know somebody who said that was proof of aliens, that when Ezekiel saw that wheel, he was seeing a UFO, and that was an alien. Mm-hmm. There's actually I want to say a cult that exists that they're called the Raelians, Raelien or something like that, a Raelian group. And their view is almost like sci-fi Bible. And what they basically have is everything is all about aliens and other beings. And like the Ark of the Covenant was actually a thermonuclear device. And that Samson, his long hair acted as an antenna to receive communications from space. Like stuff like that. And so it's like, this is kind of crazy, but it's kind of fun. And so like the Garden of Eden was a spaceship that like crashed on Earth and humans got like kicked out of it. Like they have all these crazy beliefs, but there you go. They kind of, so that another one
that's weird, man,
that we have heard about is like, when are zombies in the Bible? And we go to Revelation, in which it talks about how people want to die but are unable to die.
Right. And
so people say, see, that's undead. That's zombies. You can't die. Even when you kill them, they're still there. And then the other one that I've heard before, you might have, this is kind of a funny one, is that the very first vampire is in the Bible, and it's Cain. And that God's punishment to Cain was to make him a vampire, and then the mark that he put on him that made it so people couldn't kill him that's what is a vampire.
Right.
And that he's like, after blood. He requires blood to live now as his punishment.
Okay.
So that's kind of fun. I mean, if vampires were real, that would be a cool way to do it.
Yep. The word Twitter is also in the Bible.
Okay, when is Twitter
in
the
Isaiah
Bible?
38:14, like a swallow, like a crane, so I Twitter.
But see, you don't Twitter, you tweet.
No, you Twitter. I moan like a dove. My eyes look wistfully to the heights. Oh Lord, I'm oppressed. Be my security. So it's the sound that is made by the birds.
You know, there's
Twitter.
dating services are in the Bible.
Oh yeah, where?
Song of Solomon 2:15. Catch for us the foxes. I read that in a book once and it made me laugh. I had this book. It was just like a bunch of Bible jokes, and it was called "Don't Curl Your Hair with Holy Rollers." And
Nice.
one of them, it was just like funny lists and things. Like I should try to find a copy of this sometime because it was funny. But one of them was like Stephen King's favorite Bible stories, and one of them was the one about the guy getting stabbed, the fat guy. That's probably where I first heard that story. Was reading this book and being like, "Oh, that's funny." Wow. So those are some of the things that you would be surprised. And you know what? We could probably go further. There's some other pretty intense sections in the Bible.
Right.
We're not going to talk about them today, but it's in the Bible.
Yeah.
So you should have a good knowledge of it, not be surprised.
So people who say the Bible are boring, I think it's because you haven't read the Bible.
They haven't read it, or at least they haven't read enough of it, because there's some good stuff going on there.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun.
All right, well, let's move on. Like you said, this is going to be a shorter episode, but that's okay. Sometimes a little bit of a breather is good. But we're going to go to my ChatGPT section. This week it took a little bit of finagling. I had to adjust the prompts and have it regenerate. Okay. I even tried Google's Bard. I didn't like its answers as much. But here's what I asked it. Well, I'll tell you what I was trying to get it to give me. I asked it to generate a list hypothetically, and I had to give it a hypothetical because it wouldn't want to even do this really because of whatever. I said, hypothetically, if there were to be 10 new books of the Bible written now, what would those books be? Like, what would it look like if God were to be like, I'm not done with the Bible, let me give you 10 more books? What would those hypothetical books be?
I'm pretty sure Paul would be writing a letter to the American church.
But Paul wouldn't live, so it'd have to be something now.
Right.
But yeah, that's that idea. Like, and I told it, there's letters and biography and history and poetry, and like I tried to give it some guide. Like this is where I took some back and forth for it to get kind of the idea of what I was looking for.
Okay.
So here's what, at the very least, this is interesting in that it tells you what it views as the issues that would be covered today by what these books are about.
Okay.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Number 10, the Epistle to the Church in Rome. We already have one, so we call it Second Romans, I guess.
Second Romans.
It would be addressed to a modern-day church in Rome and offer guidance on how to live out the gospel in a secular, pluralistic society. It would examine issues such as cultural engagement, religious freedom, and evangelism, and offer practical steps for Christians to be a faithful witness in their communities.
Love it.
Okay, we could get that.
Yeah.
And
it's a good letter.
Not necessarily anything super modern about that. I mean, you could say that the existing book of Romans probably covers that. All right, the next one, number 9 on our list. This is called the Book of Endurance. Or I guess we would just call it, like if you were to say the book of Genesis. So Endurance would be the title of the book. Would explore the theme of perseverance in the Christian faith and offer guidance on how to endure through difficult times and trials. It would examine the stories of biblical figures such as Job and Paul and apply their insights to contemporary issues such as suffering and persecution. So I'm sure we've read a book like that. Now it's not in the Bible, but we've read books like that.
Yeah. Huh.
I like this one. Number 8, the Gospel According to Technology.
Nice.
This book would examine the impact of technology on modern society and offer guidance on how Christians can use technology in a way that honors God and promotes human flourishing.
Yeah.
That phrase is interesting, human flourishing. It would explore issues such as social media, artificial intelligence, and the ethics of technology. Nice. It would almost be nice for God to give us the book of technology.
Right.
Because it's such a huge piece of our lives that is not
directly addressed. Yeah.
Like,
so what are the moral and ethical implications of AI in our culture today?
Like, and I've actually seen some church leaders talk about this, and I think like it's easy to almost dismiss it as almost too sci-fi, but it's like if you ever had an AI that thought of itself as conscious. Like, let's say that happens and it seems like it is. Do we as Christians just say, well, it's just pretending to be? It's not really conscious.
Right.
Like, how do we treat
And we're getting, I feel,
we're getting, it's weird.
and this might be something in the next 50 years that is reality, not just like.
I'd say 10. I think it's coming faster than that.
Goodness.
It's exponentially.
I think you're probably right, but I just kind of want to be dead before that happens.
I kind of love it.
We'll
see what happens. All right, number 7, the Book of Community. This book explores the importance of community in the Christian faith and offer guidance on how to build and maintain healthy, supportive communities in the modern world, examine issues such as loneliness, isolation, and division, and offer practical steps for fostering unity and connection.
Okay. I mean, a lot of these outside of the technology one, the Bible speaks to so far.
It does.
This is nothing necessarily
Maybe
new.
you'd get a little bit about loneliness and isolation, specifically like
because
since
of
COVID.
what it looks like today.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
This one is kind of a funny. This almost reads like a modern update of something that you would, I don't know. Because I told it that some of the letters were to people, so not just cities.
Got it.
The Epistle to Lydia.
Nice.
Now, she lived in the Bible. There was a Lydia that was pretty famous, right?
Yep.
This epistle would be addressed to a hypothetical person named Lydia, who is a successful businesswoman in the modern world. It would offer guidance on how to integrate faith and work and how to use one's resources to serve others and advance God's kingdom.
So hypothetical
Person, but
instead of a real person.
You would want it to a real person named Lydia from who would be our apostle writing it?
Matt Chandler.
Matt Chandler. Perfect. Number 5, the Book of Healing. This book would explore the theme of physical, emotional, and spiritual healing in the modern world. It would examine issues such as sickness, grief, and trauma, and offer guidance on how Christians can seek healing and wholeness in their lives. It would offer insights into how Christians can support and care for those who are hurting. So again, healing in that way, like trauma, sickness, and grief are definitely kind of modern areas that we kind of look to and maybe address in slightly different ways than they would have in the past.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Nice.
We get another letter, the Epistle to Thomas. This epistle would be addressed to a hypothetical person named Thomas.
Was he a doubter?
Who is struggling with doubt and uncertainty in their faith. It would offer encouragement and guidance on how to trust God in the midst of doubts and questions. So it's kind of funny how it took these, because it took these actual biblical people and said, we're going to find a modern one of it.
Right.
Now, we do have a Gospel of Thomas. Yeah. It's spurious, but we have one.
Yep.
All right, and this is where we definitely get some modern thoughts in here. The Gospel according to the environment. This book would explore the Christian theology of creation, care, and offer guidance on how to be responsible stewards of the environment. It would examine the impact of climate change, pollution, and other environmental issues, and offer practical steps for individuals and communities to take.
That could be interesting.
It would be rejected by a lot of Christians.
But if it came from God, right? Because your
this is our hypothetical scenario where
God gave us new text.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be an interesting one to talk about.
Well, so you mentioned these were from God, hypothetical situation.
Hypothetical.
These were from God, but rejected by Christians. How much of what we have as the Bible right now was rejected by the original readers?
That's an interesting question as well.
I have a feeling people rejected a lot of it because it required them to change, and we as people just hate that.
We do. And I know, and Peter talks about how Paul's letters were hard to understand, and so some of it might just be, I just don't get this. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Man.
All right.
There you have
Number
it.
2, the Book of Wisdom.
More.
We had 2 more. This book would offer practical advice and wisdom for navigating the challenges of modern life. It would draw upon the wisdom literature of the Bible and apply it to contemporary issues such as work, relationships, and mental health.
Okay, so modern Proverbs.
So you're you're giving like specific scenarios with Proverbs.
And instead of like a whole bunch of different random verses, maybe the wisdom is addressing one situation with more content than just a verse.
Okay, I could be on board with that.
Yeah.
And finally,
hypothetical, guys.
the Book of Justice.
Yeah.
This book would explore the themes of justice in the modern world. It would examine issues such as systemic inequality, poverty, and discrimination, and offer guidance on how Christians can work to promote justice and reconciliation.
Okay.
It's interesting. That definitely is a modern
Yeah.
concept and idea. Not concept, but the flavor of that feels very like when you talk about systemic inequality.
Yeah.
Right? That
the words that are used with that are very
yeah, I think
they're key words of today.
There's definitely some issues maybe with how that's presented. And I think we talk about like social gospel and like that idea. It's like we always tend to go too far in either direction, I think, because people will like either reject it or make that the entire gospel. And it's like you need to find that spot in the middle.
Right.
So here's that was your top 10 hypothetical new books of the Bible.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you another hypothetical question.
Love it.
What do you think? And I think I've asked you this before. What do you think we would do as a church, as Christians, as the Christian community? What would we do if we found out beyond a shadow of a doubt that one of the New Testament books was fake? Like 2 Peter, it's a very divisive book. Scholarly speaking, the majority of biblical scholars would say that was written not by Peter and that it was written late. They would reject that as genuinely Peter. And as Christians, we would say no, because he says he's Peter. That would be lying. It's not even like it's written by a secretary. They would say this was written well after Peter had died.
Right.
So let's say, hypothetically, we found out, and I don't know how you would prove this. That's why it's a hypothetical.
Right.
But we found out beyond a shadow of a doubt that 2 Peter was not written by Peter.
Yeah.
What would we do?
I don't think, it would be removed from the canon of Scripture.
Okay.
But I don't think it does much else. At least for me, I don't see that happening, because it doesn't mean that the content of that was not potentially even inspired.
Right.
It doesn't mean that
except
it's not
for the claim
true.
to be Peter.
That's
so
fair.
now you've got the author is lying.
Maybe his name was Peter.
Well, no, like he's clearly trying to be Peter the Apostle.
I see.
As you write,
it was Nathan Webb.
Right.
In 150 AD.
Right. It was, yeah.
Got it.
And so I wonder if we'd even pull it out or if we would just bracket it and be like, hey, we found that this isn't real.
Yeah. That's funny.
Do with it what you will.
There's a lot of stuff that's written today that we look at and we're like, oh, that's good. That's true. That's accurate. I can read that. I can learn from it. I can grow from that.
Yeah.
It's not Scripture.
Right.
But it affirms it. And so is there anything in 2 Peter in this fake book?
Right.
Hypothetical book, letter that contradicts Scripture, that causes issues elsewhere, then that would be slightly different. But all things considered, I'd be like, okay. Bummer that someone pretended to be someone they're not. But all right, here we are.
For those of you watching the video podcast, one of our lights is battery powered and the battery just died. So it just got a little bit darker, but hey, for you,
I do kind of like the way it's a dramatic effect.
It does make it
now.
dramatic. So here's the question, or not question. Here's the thing: if you are listening only to this podcast, if you're not watching and you're just listening, to get the same effect, close your right eye while you listen.
Unless you're driving, keep both eyes open and on the road, please.
All right, let's move on to our listener mail before we close out the show for today. We got an email from our good friend Tucker.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Before I go on, there was something I was going to mention. That ChatGPT segment. I mentioned this last week. I'm going to say it again. If you are interested in sponsoring our ChatGPT so that we can get GPT-4, email podcast@dfchurch.com. And here's what I'm thinking. If you want to sponsor it for a month, let's say you just want to cover us for 1 month, we will do a couple things for you. We will read out whatever kind of advertisement you want. So like if you're run a business and you want your business to sponsor that month's ChatGPT, we will read out the name of your business or anything, within reason. We reserve the right to edit all content and all that. But we will give you a little plug for whatever business or thing that you want us to plug for you, or just say your name. And as a supporter of that segment, you can pick one of the prompts. And both Matt and I will live react to that. So
love it.
If you want to sponsor our ChatGPT segment, email podcast@dfchurch.com and we will give you all the details from there. Now, we're going to move on to Tucker, who had written us an email. Now we know Tucker, but this is a good question. He said, do the other quote unquote gods exist? Like, are the gods in the Bible and gods that are still worshipped today, do they actually exist? Like, are they spiritual beings that rebelled against God, just like Lucifer, the Satan, and raised themselves up to be gods? Or are they just idols made of wood and stone?
Ooh.
I thought this was a great question. Now, I will say on a side note, it's kind of an interesting thing when we refer to Satan, which he did correctly, the Satan. Like, so, the word there in the Old Testament just means the adversary or, the one, like the prosecutor, basically. Lucifer is another interesting one that is so closely associated with Satan. However, I don't know if biblically there's a reason for that, or a good reason for that. So where we get Lucifer is a translation in Isaiah. There's a section in Isaiah that is often thought to be about Satan. Who it's like, how you have fallen, O bright morning star. And then most people take that to be a reference to Satan. Now, this morning star in Latin is just translated as Lucifer. So it's never a name or anything. It's just a bright morning star, and Lucifer just means like bright burning thing. And so really the only connection that Latin word Lucifer has to the person that we see in the Bible, Satan, the only connection is the Latin translation of a term in Isaiah that may or may not actually be about the devil.
Interesting.
And so I'd say I don't refer to Satan as Lucifer because it seems very tenuous.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah. Nice.
But what do you think about this question? Do other gods exist at all?
Right. I mean, all throughout Scripture, you see God claiming that there are no other gods.
Right. There are no other beings who are gods.
Right. And so in answer to that part, I would say, no, they don't actually exist.
At least as gods.
As an actual god.
Right.
Were there creatures, people that were worshipped as a god?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are some of the gods demons? I think Paul says that, doesn't he?
Yes. Yep.
So I think, Tucker, to answer your question, yes, I think a lot of the gods that are worshipped are just demons. Now, I did read, or I was listening to somebody, and this was an interesting take that they had, and they were talking about the effects of sin in the fallen world on spiritual beings. And they were saying, you had all these demons who fell, and now they're these immortal beings in this fallen state that are constantly degrading. And he was saying that he was wondering if some of these beings who are posing as gods to be worshipped by, tribes or things like that, as time has passed and they've kind of slipped and gotten even more, like maybe they actually believe that they are who they say they are. They're not pretending to be these gods anymore.
They really
actually
think they are. Yeah.
They are.
Yep.
And he was even saying this was maybe a step further than I don't know. But he was saying, to the extent that maybe some of them aren't even necessarily acting evil. They just think that they're like the protector god of this little tribe somewhere. Like, that's an interesting thought.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So 1 Corinthians 10:20 real quick is where where Paul says the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons.
Right. So
implying that those acts of worship that people were doing to so-called gods, it's actually to demons. Really interesting.
And so, I think that's kind of the answer, is that they are, it's both. Like, there are sometimes probably just idols of stone or made up, things like that. But often I would imagine that demonic entities exist, and
for the point of trying to draw worship away from the one true God.
Right.
Right. So interesting.
That's awesome. Well, if you want to have your question read here on the podcast, email podcast@dfchurch.com. Not quite sure what our topic is going to be next week. We're still figuring that out, but we will see you then.
Looking forward to it. Bye, guys.